My name's Laura Aldridge and I'm an artist. I live in Glasgow and I'm showing in the Travelling Gallery show TG, which is part of the Generations programme, and my work I'm going to include is a series of ceramic works which are sort of basically rolled out pieces of clay that are then sort of twisted and formed into these, they're quite bodily, it's quite ambiguous to what they actually are, but they're quite sort of physical sort of forms in ceramic, which I then pit fire using different sort of natural elements like seaweed and coffee to give the clay colour. I think when I chose to study art for A-level, which was kind of after my sort of secondary school, we were given these really beautiful sketchbooks that were sort of A4 size, really gorgeous cartridge paper. I think they were handmade somewhere, and it was a really big part of the course that you had these beautiful sketchbooks and you did all this drawing. I think the Travelling Gallery is quite an amazing thing for Scotland, really. I've known about it for some time, and so I was quite excited when Alison asked me to take part in the show that I'm in. I think it's brilliant.
Can you introduce yourself, please?
My name is Craig Coulthard and I'm an artist who is currently living in London but spent a long time in Edinburgh.
How does art and music make you feel? And do you have a particular muse?
Well, I think art and music make me feel quite fulfilled and generally quite happy to be alive, to be honest. It's also kind of scary because you're constantly wondering if it's any good. So it's a challenge to make art, but it's satisfying. In terms of a muse, I think I am particularly interested in connections between people across the world, or connections between the present and the past, things that I notice that maybe somebody else hasn't, or I feel that things have been overlooked. When you make art, or when I make art, it's important to me to try and strike a balance between giving people enough information that they become interested, but not too much that they don't have to think for themselves. For the Travelling Gallery, I'm making a number of artworks, some ceramic plates and some small model airplanes. And I'm also making a couple of large felt textile pieces that will hang on the walls. And they are inspired by tiles that you see in Edinburgh. So I wanted to bring attention to them by taking them off the floor and up onto the wall, because normally they're in doorways where people just walk over and ignore them. And I think they're really interesting designs, but also interesting culturally in the way that they've come to exist. A lot of these particular designs are inspired by Islamic and Arabesque art. And hopefully by taking more notice of them, they may think about our connections to other places in the world and how they work.
What is your favourite project that you've ever done, and why?
Probably so far, my favourite project was Forest Pitch, which was part of the London Olympic Games. So basically I built a full-size football pitch in the middle of a forest. The players that we asked to take part were all people who were new British citizens, or people who had indefinite leave to remain in the UK and were living in Scotland. So they represented a kind of alternative idea of Scottish identity. I think I wanted people to think about what makes up a society, what makes up an identity, what makes people Scottish or British, if anything. And I wanted people to think about how something like football can bring people from different places all over the world together.
My name is Hannah Tiliki. I'm an artist, composer and performer, and for the Travelling Gallery I have written a piece of music for 2 female singers, and I have recorded it and I will present it as a visual score, a circular score, and an LP. I've always had a love of nature or the environment, landscape. As a child I was fascinated with birds, and then I would take myself off for walks on my own, and so those experiences have always informed, kind of seeped into my work. Well, it's been wonderful to be asked to do something for the Travelling Gallery. It's an amazing way for work to travel into non-urban environments and to the communities in those areas. So I like the idea that this work that I've made that is from the Highlands and Islands is somehow going back into those spaces.
My name's Mandy McIntosh and I'm a visual artist based in Glasgow, and I've been making visual artwork in lots of different kinds of media like film and textiles and sculpture and public art. I've been doing that since 1996. Whenever I did start first making films, it felt really the same as making textiles. You know, it was the same thinking, it was the same kind of like colour and form and shape and content and almost like ribbons, like kind of tying ribbons together. It felt like weaving, the same kind of processes. It's not deliberately low tech. It's really hard to explain actually how my animation looks the way it does. I mean, I think the way to explain it is that it originates in drawings. I'd say it's kind of more like traditional puppetry. That's how I describe it. And to make one of the things that is actually quite lo-fi about my animation is how things move around, because I'm not trained as a 3D animator in any way. I'm completely self-taught, and there's something really quite clumsy and clunky sometimes about how I make things move. And in fact, if you look at Thunderbirds, quite a lot of it is static. Like the people aren't moving, but the cameras are. And the theme of the strand was secret monsters, and the Thunderbirds are essentially, you know, the secret monsters because they come out of nowhere and they're these like great, strange mythological creatures and no one knows where they came from or where they went. And essentially they wanted to eat this small boy. The fact that human beings would treat a small child like that after he had been through the ordeal, you know, the fact that they taunted him and they left dead birds by his doorstep and they, you know, he became ostracised from his community. That to me just really depicted something I think quite specific about how cruel human beings can be.
I started off really disliking performance. I didn't like it at all, and there was these performances that were quite earnest and quite serious. And then I kind of wanted to make performances in a gallery space which were akin to a stand-up comedy routine. Recently I was in an art fair and I made this performance in the art fair which was walking around the art fair shaking a can of Coke. Right, and I started to develop this patter, which was, this is gonna blow. This can of Coke is gonna blow, guys. I get a lot of pens and I put them into my mouth, and it's a way of sort of starting a performance or getting attention. So say you're in a gallery and people are all maybe having a drink or whatever, and then you start to do this. Whoa! then people stop and they turn around and that's kind of like an introduction to starting to do a performance in a way. Instead of having someone say, we have David Sherry here today, he's an artist and blah, 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 blah. What I'm going to show in the Travelling Gallery, I'm going to show this, and this has got lots of my works on there, including my art statement, which I've scrunched up, and then another piece that I've scrunched up, and then this piece, which is a stretched neck performance. Most of the drawings that I show are out of notebooks, so I've just got stacks of notebooks that I keep, and I make lots of drawings in those notebooks. Kermie! There's Kermie!